Good morning. Um, this morning I'd like to chat about the relationship between the information that you study and the actual practice of that information. I look at these as two very distinct categories. The practice of whatever it's a different task than the actual acquiring of the information. And I found over the years that it's much easier to acquire information, idea, technique, method, etc., etc. There's plenty of that out there, some really good stuff. The difficulty is in the regular practice of that. And if you learned 1,000 techniques, 1,000 drills, solo, with a partner, whatever, doesn't make any difference. You learn a large amount of things to practice. But then when it comes to practicing them, there's 1,000 of these in like 1 hour of practice. So my point this morning is that it's when you look at these as two very distinct tasks, the major task is actually the regular practice. And I would say personally that I've learned more from committing to practicing every day, and that it shouldn't be flitting around too much. There should be a chunk of information that you're approaching every single day, and then once that's completed, that area of concentration, then that will lead to some other things, and it's perfectly okay to do a little of this and a little of that, etc., etc. Once you have a practice in place, it's very easy to it's easier to put new information in there and then to adjust and refine things that you're already doing. Without approaching it regularly, and by regularly I mean daily, or as daily as you can discipline yourself to do, as daily as your life allows you to do, and your health, and etc., etc. Once you have that in place, then the refinement process definitely can happen. Without approaching it every day, what ends up happening is that when you do go to practice, what you're really doing is you're re-upping on a practice, as opposed to building on the prior day. You've let it go, so then now you're trying to get back on board. And I see a number of people that ends up being what they do, and hopefully at a pace where they don't forget the information. Say if we're talking about a form, it doesn't have to be forms, but forms are a good way of kind of cataloging information and then handing it down to the next generation. It gives it a really good place to reside. It's easy to approach. Whereas if you took those individually and did a separate practice of each one of those things that are in a form, it would take quite a bit longer. And one of the things that happens with daily practice is time is always a factor. And that would be especially true whether you're working or whether you're retired. It really doesn't make any difference. You still have to set aside the time that you're going to be doing your practice. And then if you set the commitment so that there'll be at least one session every 24 hours. You only have the waking hours to do that. So it needs to be organized. And there's so much self-speak around approaching a daily practice that it affords a situation for you to learn an awful lot about yourself. One of the main goals in martial arts training is indomitable spirit, undefeatable spirit. The heart and the mind are basically undefeatable. The body certainly is, but the rest of you, it does not have to be. It's undefeatable. So, but that approaching of a daily practice every day is something that can definitely contribute to this indomitable spirit. So, there you go. I look at it as the very first category is the practice itself. And I discipline myself to start my practice. Once I'm in the practice, then I'm more Taoist about it, and I just go with the flow. Some days more, some days less, some days this, some days that. But there's a certain core of my training that I approach every day, mainly the Tai Chi form. And then you have whatever you're going to practice. So you have the initial idea of the practice itself. And then inside the practice, you put whatever, the things that you're going to do every day, the things that you're going to approach maybe on a weekly basis, the things that you're going to approach even less frequently than that. And then there you go. But looking at the practice as a separate thing that actually has to be practiced in order to get it. A lot of people never really transition over to becoming practitioners. And a practitioner is simply someone like myself that just likes to practice. And I don't want to say that it's fun every single time, but the potential for it to be a very positive experience certainly exists, mainly because I'm approaching it. Without approaching it, you would have no way of having any understanding of that. Okay, this is getting a little too long, so I'm going to sign out, and I hope that helps.